Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the international best-selling book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. Our guest today is Marla Hughes, who has worked with children her entire life. With a master's degree in exercise physiology, Marla has worked in the pediatric transplant unit at UCSF Hospital in San Francisco, teaching children about exercise, good nutrition, and relaxation. She's also worked at the Center for Attitudinal Healing with its founder, Dr. Gerald Jampolsky, using art and music therapy to help young children who had life-threatening diseases or had a parent or a loved one who was severely ill. With this passion, Marla has created a podcast called Interviews with Innocence. Knowing that we can learn from children will help us reconnect to our spiritual selves. The episodes of her show will resonate with anyone who's curious about big questions like, what is the meaning of life? And are life and love eternal? Her hope is that these interviews of the spiritual wisdom of our young will remind us to slow down, be more present, loving, grateful, and childlike. If you are a fan of this show, We Don't Die Radio, you will really enjoy Interviews with Innocence, helping all of us discover, embrace, and connect with that sacred core and magic of childhood that resides in all of us. You can visit her website at interviewswithinnocence.com or on Facebook, simply search for Interviews with Innocence. Marla Hughes, welcome to We Don't Die Radio.
Thank you, Sandra. It's an honor to be here.
Well, it's long overdue, so I'm so grateful that we're making this happen.
Yes, me too. Me too.
So Marla, where are you, by the way? You're on the West Coast of the United States. Somewhere.
Yes, I am in Southern California in Laguna Beach. It is pouring down rain here. And so that's where I am right now. We're all inside doing the best we can. I'm actually really enjoying it though, just reading and catching up and playing with my 2 Labradoodles and my children that are home from college. So it's kind of fun.
Oh, that's nice. And for our listener, I don't know when you're listening to this. You could be listening in 2022, and we are recording this back in April of 2020. And we have the COVID-19 pandemic happening, and we're mostly all housebound right now. So if you hear us refer to that, you know what we're talking about. So Marla, how does your story begin? I'm just so grateful and just feel so humbled about what you've done with children. And boy, one of my dad's favorite people was Gerald Jampolsky. And I thought, oh, that's pretty cool.
Really?
Yes.
That's funny.
So we can talk a little
not many people, not many of my friends are familiar with his work. Yeah, that was really great. Well, I started working with children, and I worked a lot with adults too in the exercise physiology world, but my work with the children is what I truly loved best, because I've always been really childlike myself, and there's nothing I like better than to get on the ground and roll around with a toddler and giggle and play, and animals and children are kind of my thing. And so I was very fortunate to be able to, to work with children, but really my biggest joy was when I became a mother. And I have 3 children. One is in heaven, and I like to use that word just because I think it's a nice word. And my twins are 21, and they are here with us right now because of unfortunately what's going on within the world. But it's great to have them here. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about myself. When I was when the children were young, and I want to talk about Dean because he is my son who passed a little less than 3 years ago. So it's still very, very raw for me. But Dean was just this really, really happy very sensitive kid. I mean, he's my child who would tear up. Even when he was 19 years old, he would tear up, and just as sort of friends got in a fight, and he would try to mediate. But he was also just a really happy kid. It was almost weird. I would say to my friends, it's so weird. He's just happy all the time. And I had a great time raising them because they went to the Waldorf school. And if anyone knows about the Waldorf school, no battery operated toys allowed.
Wow,
So we did a lot of creative stuff. Yeah, we would, sing songs, make up stories, and do things that all moms do. But I just loved every second of it. And a few years ago, and I was always a yogi, and I thought I was spiritual until I got involved in, went down this path. And a little less than 3 years ago, tragically, my 19-year-old transitioned to the other side, and I experienced a pain I never even knew existed. And our family was so close, Sandra. It was like we had this, nothing's perfect, but it's like we almost had this perfect thing going. I mean, the kids were only less than a year apart, and I just had 3, bottles, 3 in diapers, 3 in this, 3 in that. And we traveled a lot, and it just seemed like things were just, I used to think to myself, wow, how can life be this way? And after the tragedy happened, I had something happen to me that really started me down this path. And what it was that I have a friend, a dear friend, Teresa, who is very clairvoyant. She is a medium, even though she doesn't call herself a medium. And a few weeks after this tragedy, she called me and said, I was telling her about a dream I had. And she said, well, Marla, I've been wanting to tell you something, but I wanted to wait until it was the right time. And I really wanted to wait and see you. And I was, I said, well, please share with me. And she said, Dean came to me a couple of weeks, not a couple of, like a week ago or so. And at 4 a.m, and I woke up and I went out into the playroom and I just wrote down everything that came through. And she said, I didn't read it. I sealed it up. I put it in an envelope, and I have it here for you. And she said, would you like me to read it to you? And I was shaking at this point.
Sure.
And I remember I was out walking the dogs, and I just sat down on the curb and I just said yes. And I'd like to share part of that letter with you, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mom and Dad, you and Dad showed me every day the secrets to pure love by your open hearts and your open ways. I truly feel blessed and honored to have such a blessed gift. You and Dad were a cherished and divine gift to me. My soul, however, has a bigger job to do. I was on earth at that time to experience the discording of the love that I lived and the unlove that I saw in the world. And I am here now to bridge these worlds, to bring forth the words, the songs, the quotes, the mantras, the little reminders that lead us back to the natural childlike state of true, pure love. Simply put, I am here in your world and mine to put back into people's minds and hearts so as to allow authentic, loving experiences through playful, joyful ways to drop back into authentic, pure, honest, simply put, love. So as we move forward, Mama, let me tell you, please hear me. I am grateful for you and your loving mothering. And I am here where I am supposed to be to do my life's plan and purpose. And that is to be a reminder of the pure and simple love. Without it, life has no meaning. So, Mama, let's begin a new adventure. Hear my word, hear my songs, hear my voice. Bring it through to all those who need it. Be a mother to the world. Only your heart can possibly hold this message and share this love. Do it for me, Mom, please. I love you in only the way you and I would understand. I know you know what this means. I have your heart as you have always had mine. I love you, your Dino.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And she read this to me, and I so wanted to just believe that it was true. And I didn't know what to do with it. So I just held it. I just held it close to my heart, and I didn't tell anyone about it. And a while later, I didn't even know what a medium was, or a psychic, or anything like that. And an old friend of mine called me and said, Marla, there's a guy down that he and his wife, they live, not far from you. And I think you might, he might be able to help you if you're ready to, to try and connect with Dean. She knew Dean really well. We had traveled the world with this woman. And so, of course, I said yes. And what was amazing was it ends up that this gentleman is a very well-known scientist. I can't use his name, but he worked with two Nobel Prize winners who actually co-worked. I don't think that's a word, but something with DNA, and they were very scientific people. And he and his wife had a loss in the family, and they had experienced some mediumship, and they decided they were really curious about this. So they decided that they wanted to explore being mediums. So they did. And they actually use a board, which a lot of people get kind of weird about that, but it's actually a really beautiful tool. And so they tried, and they told me this later after I got to know them. They tried, and they almost gave up. And then lo and behold, someone came through. And they have been helping just friends and family out of the, kindness in their hearts to bring messages from the other side. So I found out about who this guy was, and his wife is just wonderful. And we sat down, and Dean came through right away. And I didn't even tell my husband or my kids or anything. I took my girlfriend who had written the letter, and he came through, and once again, he had said his learning on this earth was complete, and he explained some things to me. And this was so huge for me because this was a very scientific minded man. And I'll never forget. So first of all, it was so validating. And then second, he said to me, I remember something that Wayne Dyer said once, and it is, the ultimate ignorance is absolutely refusing to accept an idea, rejecting an idea, yet refusing to investigate. And that just totally set me on fire. And so I decided that I needed to find out what this meaning of life is all about, where we go, and what it's all about. So I dove in it very much like you did on your journey. And I had a reading with George Anderson, which was very life-changing. He's I'm sure you know George Anderson.
Yes.
And he also, I had read his book, which was
same title as mine.
And pardon me.
It's the same title as mine, if I'm thinking of the same one.
Yes,
We Don't Die.
It is.
Yeah, but it's the story of his mediumship. We Don't Die.
Yes. And I suggest everyone listen to it because it's just amazing. And he also said, it's really interesting. Dean is saying that he knew he was going to pass, which he had already told me in the media, but you hear it over and you have to hear it over and over. And he said, does that make sense to you? And I said, no, not really. And then, he pauses like they do. And then he said, he didn't know consciously, but he knew subconsciously that when he got there, that he had known all along. And it just all kind of started making sense to me. So I started I went out to Banyan almost immediately after Banyan retreat to do physical mediumship and sit in a seance all by myself. I had no idea what it was, what I was doing, but I experienced the physical mediumship there. I did mediumship workshops with Sandra Geisman and Eileen Davies and past lives. And I also went to a plant medicine retreat in Costa Rica. And I always kept going back to the children. I want to help the children. And I kept remembering be a mom to the universe, which made so much sense to me because that message is what I'm all about, what I love, what I'm so passionate about. So really, I decided to start. I actually decided to write a book, but I didn't really. My friends were not involved in anything spiritual at all, and I wasn't coming up with the stories that I wanted to find. So I thought, I'll start a podcast. And I was very fortunate because I met Lisa Smart and Raymond Moody very early on and went out and visited with them and became very good friends with them. So they were really supportive. And so they wanted me to be a part of, what they were doing at the time. So my goal in creating the podcast is really threefold. The first is to celebrate the wisdom that the very young bring into this world. And if any of your listeners have read Wayne Dyer's book, Memories of Heaven, it's about children that are 2-3 years old, talking about choosing parents, about meeting relatives before they come down to this earthly realm, about past lives. I interviewed Carol Bowman. She was just amazing. She's worked with Ian Stevenson and some others that do a lot of work with past lives and children. But to really celebrate the wisdom and also the wisdom of children who I call gifted. I have a special needs nephew that is my godchild, and it's my twin sister's son. And I've interviewed some people who have had children with autism or on the autism scale and Down syndrome. These children are so intuitive and they see spirit, and the stories they're just mind blowing. And so one of the things is that I want to celebrate that wisdom. And with that, I want people to remember to validate really validate what young children say instead of just kind of throwing it out as imagination. The second is, and this is a really important part of my podcast because I don't want people to think that it's just about children or for children. Mm-hmm. It's about us getting back to our true, authentic self, back to our source. And I'll never forget when I went to the plant medicine workshop in Costa Rica, and there was holotropic breathing and also ayahuasca. And that is a plant or a tea that the indigenous tribes have used in the medicine men, and a lot of research is going on with that right now. But they said that when we were there that, you should think of 3 things. The first being, what have I become? And what they meant by that is, like, what happened to me? I mean, when I was this little 1 or 2 year old, and all these things in life, happen. And so who have I become? And that was really profound for me. Who have I become? Because you think about everything that you've been through, in your life. The second thing was to re-emerge with your soul. And in other words, go back to that when you first came into this earthly realm. And then the third was to heal your heart. So those were the 3 steps. And that's what I mean by getting back to our true authentic selves. They even suggested, which I loved, was putting a picture of yourself as a 2 or 3 year old on your phone. And when you're thinking about doing something, or you are having a bad day, or just check in with that person. Not that person, check in with you.
That's great.
And I know, isn't that a great idea? And once again, just for people to remember, just remember who we really truly are. And going back to authentic self, then of course that brings you back to what's really important in life, which is unconditional love. It's not all the other stuff that we get so crazy about, and myself included. And so bringing people on the podcast that talk about that, spiritual leaders, even philosophers, just all kinds of different people. And along with that, for us to awaken, not only to remember our authentic selves, but think about how we are modeling for children. And just a little story quickly, when I went through, when our family went through this, a lot of people just disappeared. No one knew. Many did not know what to do.
Right.
And it was really, it was, at the time, it was really hurtful. I understand now a little bit, but I work in Ethiopia, and that's another story. But I'll never, ever forget, I went out there, and I work on one of the projects I have is a small community where they have this beautiful, sustainable, I'll call it compound, but it should be called a sanctuary. I'm going to call it a sanctuary. And it's sustainable, and it's for the orphans in the community. Now, the orphans do live with families, and however, this is a school just for them. And they also have a women's empowerment program there. And these are the poorest of the poor women. I mean, they are just so, they come to learn to read, to learn how to wash your hands. We did a whole thing on washing hands, which is, I have to smile every time I see that on TV right now about, showing us how to wash the hands. And so I was doing a workshop with them just about love and friendship, and it was all translated. And the guy I was working with, the gentleman, I said, tell them my story. And he told them about Dean. And Sandra, this is the way it should be after tragedy happens. And it's what all the indigenous people do, and what, centuries ago, and the Native Americans, these women surrounded me in tears and held me, and just, it was the most beautiful, beautiful feeling that I was so supported. And I thought, boy, and I know that doesn't happen to everybody, that people just disappear. Maybe that's just my experience, but my thought wasn't really, we should do this better. My thought was, what do children, those children of the families that really aren't doing it?
What's the dog's name?
Yes. Daisy.
Hi, Daisy.
My puppy is 10 months old. Excuse me.
That's okay.
Modeling for these children. I mean, they're watching everything we do. I mean, like, why aren't we reaching out? Or they're watching when you see a homeless person. They're watching when you find a hurt animal. They're watching when someone is in need. And what do we do? So we have to remember that to the modeling, and also validating the importance of their feelings. But that's kind of going back to number one. And then the third one, which is so important, and which what you're doing on your podcast, is teaching people about the afterlife. And so what I really want to do too is to put the seed out there that maybe we should rewrite how we teach heaven. And I always think of, you think of a child maybe losing, let's say, a puppy. And if that child has known, and you can put a religious bent on it if I mean, this podcast is absolutely non-religious, which yours is the same, or it's all religious, however you want to look at it. It's
Right.
about love. It's about that love part of all religions.
Yes.
Um, but that what I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
Yeah,
Something I was really saying.
teaching people about the afterlife was the third part.
Yeah, yeah. That, they just take a different form. And, young children see spirit. If you start asking around, it's amazing all the stories that you hear. But with that they just change form, and they're still here for us to pray to and talk to and laugh with and ask questions and ask for help, and to set up maybe a little altar, if that's not too crazy of a word for people, or just a reminder of those in the afterlife. And I think that's just so important. So with that one day, and with that said, I've been working with Sonia Rinaldi. She's actually writing the books, but I'm really trying to help her get those out there in terms of teaching children about the afterlife. And so I wrote a list.
Oh, Marla,
Yes.
if you don't mind, just tell people who Sonia Rinaldi is.
Oh, Sonia Rinaldi is I'm so sorry. I'm throwing out names.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, Sonia Rinaldi. I know she's a good friend of yours. So Sonia Rinaldi is this amazing Brazilian researcher that is doing incredible work in the field of, first it was EVP. That's how you say that, right? Bringing messages through from the afterlife. And now it's actually using vapor. And she brings in forms. I mean, people, I've seen this. Sandra, you've seen this. Actual people that have passed, and the outline, not just the outline, their actual pictures through this vapor as it comes through. And that's not a very good explanation, but I'm sure you'll put a link at the end of your show notes or whatever. But you've got to see what Sonia Rinaldi is doing, because it is pure. I'm not going to use the word magic, because it's not magic. It's profound, and it's irrefutable, the afterlife, after you see it, in my mind. Anyway.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think she's the best evidence of the afterlife we've got going, because she's taken pictures of, say, you're talking about vapor, but she's also done different kinds of statical electricity or energy. I don't even know how you say it. But then when she looks at the pictures, there's pictures of people's loved ones. And say if somebody passed when they're 90, they'll show themselves as a 20-year-old. A picture, yes. She had sent a whole file of unknown people. And lo and behold, my dad was one of them, showing himself.
I remember that.
Yeah, when he was in his 20s. And it's not a picture that we have of him, and there's no doubt it's him. So to have her be able to reconnect, mostly parents, with their loved ones, and some of them taken tragically, it's incredible. So I'm definitely she's in her corner.
Go ahead. Yeah. And she's very passionate about children too. So we're in cahoots on all of this. So I wrote out my what ifs list. It was downloaded to me. Actually, I'll just read a few of them.
Okay.
And one is, what if parents taught children from the day they were born about the truth of the afterlife, that death is not the end, that our souls live on forever? What if children understood and believed with all their hearts that our souls live before this earthly existence, and we are on this earth to be the best we can be? Living on the earth is the same as going to school, learning about being the best person we can possibly be. What if heaven was redefined for children, so there would be love, trust, and knowing that the spirit world is one very much like our own, but without the pain and suffering? What if children were taught that once again, death is not the end, but instead just a simple transition, like walking through a door? It is a very peaceful walk, and the lost one is not lost, but more alive than ever. Their physical forms are no longer, I love the analogy of discarding an old coat, but the energy form is alive and well, and here for us on earth to talk to, ask for guidance, cry with, and laugh with. And then I go on to talk a little bit about synchronicity and looking at for signs from loved ones. I mean, what a fun thing to do with your, with young ones. And not only is it for them, it's for us to remember. And once going back. So I think especially today, it was so interesting. Right before this interview, I got this, I received something from my Google alerts, which, I'm probably the only one in the world that has Google alerts on children and spirituality and near-death experience.
Good for you.
You probably do.
I got a couple.
But it was all about UNICEF bringing out this global launch of global multi-religious faith in action cover. COVID-19 initiative. But once again, this may air, later for other people. So I really won't get into that. So, but I really believe that there's an awakening, a transformation in this world going on. And we have got to trust and to remember that our very young are so important and for them to, and us, to follow, to trust our inner guidance, to trust our feelings, to trust the power of love, and just to bring more of that into the world. So I've been interviewing all kinds of different people. I'm so excited. I've had so many great interviews. I just started this in December.
You're a wild woman. I'm so proud of you doing so much
I'm just
so
on
fast.
Fire.
Can you tell us about some of the people you've interviewed? Because I think I can't, unfortunately, do a ton of interviews all the time. And there's a lot. I have been traveling with the job that pays me and pays my mortgage is so busy. So I haven't always been able to record interviews. So I apologize to people, but I love that you're doing what you're doing, because when all of a sudden there's no more episodes, there's plenty of interviews with Innocence, because it really does complement. It really does. And I think for our listener listening, you're easy to listen to. You care. You're talking about similar subject, a little different twist
Absolutely.
to it. And every person I see, I'm not always conscious of it, but I know what you mean. We're a little kid and every dream is possible. And then things happen, it gets shut down. But you still look at people, no matter what age they are, they have that innocent child within them. So there is a way to live and get back in touch with it. And not that I'm a fan of what's happening in the world, but it is causing many of us to slow down and not have so many distractions. And we're getting some peace of mind, and we're starting to dig through that kind of thing. So it's good.
Right.
But back to you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about some of your guests.
Right. But before we do that, I also wanted to just briefly, the life review, how would it be if as a very young child, you knew that one of the most important things, if not the most important thing in life, is how you treat others, and that you will feel how they felt, how you made them feel. You know what I mean?
I do. You get to actually experience from the other person's perspective.
Exactly.
The good and the good and the not so good.
Right.
Yeah.
But how your actions have made them feel. And ever since I learned about the life review, I walk through life very differently now. So anyway, a few of my interviews, Melvin Morse was great, pediatric, Johns Hopkins surgeon. He was resuscitating, his life changed in Idaho one night when he resuscitated I think she was around 6 or 7 year old who had drowned, and she had died. And however, she was resuscitated, and she came back telling all of these stories. And not only that, she recognized Dr. Morse when he came in weeks later to check in on her. And she started talking about what was going on in the hospital room when she was gone. She talked about when they were resuscitating her and things, once again, she saw in the room, which was, she had her eyes taped shut and she was supposedly, totally gone. And so at first, Dr. Morse thought, being the scientific and a very young man in his residency, thinking, how did she remember? It was more about memory. So he went on a decade-long research study at Seattle Children's Hospital and studied many children they were all resuscitated. And it's just all stories about what these children said. And then he had them draw artwork of what they saw. And it's astounding. And when I talked to him about what did you learn, and he said they all came back and said it's all about lessons of love. And so that was really great. And then Carol Bowman, oh my gosh. So she got involved, her young son at 3 or 4 he was having these terrible phobias of these loud booming noises. And so long story short, interestingly, she had a past life person over at her house, which is amazing in itself because this was a long time ago before anybody really that I knew of anyway. And so the child sat on this person's lap and he closed his eyes and he started talking about a past life and was very detailed. And long story short, they found out a lot of what he had said was true. And not only that, after he talked about it, not only did his phobia go away, but he became a drummer actually on the side, but also he had this really bad eczema where he said he was shot when he was a soldier in his past life. It completely disappeared, and it had been very chronic and bad for a long time.
Interesting.
So she has this one story, and the woman has decided not to put her name out there. But if you listen to the podcast, there's a link to find it. I can't remember what it is right now, but it's about a child that came back. This might sound crazy, but from 9/11. And sooner than like most people think when they think of past lives. But, it's all about reincarnation. So she went crazy too. She went on this great, this amazing journey and did things like put an article in Parents Magazine and people just started flowing. And so she worked with the top people in the world, Jim Tucker, Ian Stevenson. So it's all about children and past lives. Let's see, Nick Whittam, beautiful energy healer from the UK. I'm taking a class from him right now. I've been very interested, like I said, in children who have special gifts. So I'm actually going to interview, I interviewed a teacher who works with Down syndrome children and a few others that the stories they have are just great. Oh my gosh.
I know it's hard to remember.
I have my list here. Yeah, I have Dr. Joe Tafur, UCSD. I'm trained physician from Columbia. And I don't know if you've talked much about psychedelics on your program. Well, I'm just so, I think it's going to change the world because of the work that's being done with psilocybin and these things at Johns Hopkins and Penn and CIIS up in San Francisco, and working with people with anxiety and PTSD. We don't use D anymore. It's just PTS now.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what Lily had told me, which makes sense. It shouldn't be a disorder. Anyway, and when you just look at what's going on, and the results have been astounding. I mean, like astounding. And so anyway, back to my interviews. So Dr. Joe Tafur from Columbia got really depressed in medical school because it was just so cutthroat and not the kindest people. And he thought, gosh, there's got to be more than this. And so anyway, he was introduced to plant medicine and really dove in, and he's a shaman now, and he spends a lot of time in Colombia, and he's still practicing. But one of my passions is bridging Eastern and Western spirituality. And so I've had shamans on this show and some mediums, Isabella Johnson. Okay, so can I tell you a story about Isabella?
Yes.
Okay. So once again, I was kind of new with the whole medium world, and this has to be the most profound thing that happened to me with a medium, even though George was very profound. They all are. But so I was I was actually sitting in the car having a reading from this woman I didn't even know. I probably knew her from you, Sandra, but I scheduled a mediumship reading with her for an hour. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know my name. Her assistant does all of it, knew nothing about me. Immediately brought Dean through and started talking about Africa. Dean lived in Africa for a while and worked with my brother-in-law, who's a doctor there. That's what took me to Ethiopia. And he started talking about his experience in Ethiopia. And then he started talking about, I was going to go to London to go to Banyan, and started talking about me going to London and that he would be with me. So all of this like really validating stuff. But then she said, he's saying something about gene. I was like, gene, Jean. I don't know what she said. No. No, about gene, Gene, and chromosomes. And he's saying he wants to thank you for making the decision to bring him into this world to fulfill his destiny. Well, Sandra, when I was pregnant with Dean, we had abnormal amnio, and Sandra, no one knew about this. Mm-hmm. We didn't tell my mother, and it just, that's when I hung up the phone that day, I just said my life has changed forever, because to bring that through was just so, so profound. Did that make sense?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, okay.
I haven't been through it, but I know mediums can strike a chord, even if with people that, hearing somebody else's story is one thing, but when you hear for yourself something that there's no way another human being could possibly know.
Right.
It's
yeah.
Just
so that's just amazing. Yeah.
Great.
And then I've had PMH Outwater on the show. Going to have her back. Love her. I love it when she talks about the children that are coming in today, and they've been coming for a while, that they're really mirroring to us what we've done. Not that we've done everything wrong, but what's going wrong in this world. And they're saying, no, we're not going to do it this way anymore. And I love it because she says, we must do it better. We must shout to the world. We can do this better for our children. We owe it to them. We owe it to the divine. I just love, she's just great. And I'm going to have Sonia on the program that we talked about a little bit earlier. And I'm going to have you on the program.
That's right.
Karen Newell, and talk about HemiSync. I guess they've done some sound healing.
Yes.
That they've also done with children that I'm very excited about. So yeah, and Raymond Moody, of course, I'm having him on the program again, but he came on to talk about his journey. He's always an absolute delight to have on. And an animal communicator, Lori Blomer. I don't know if you've heard of her or not, but I'm actually interviewing her tomorrow, and an aromatherapy expert who talks about the wonders of aromatherapy and the medicinal practice and how we can use it to, sort of like meditation, and also how we can use it with our very young. So anyway, those are some of the people that I'm interviewing, and I really encourage people to tell me this is kind of my mission too. Tell me what you want to learn about, and I'll go do it, and I'll come back and tell you about it.
Oh, isn't that nice of you?
Well, you've done that. I
know. Well, how can you not go to some of these places when it seems so outrageous that it's like, I've got to see this for myself.
I know.
I have to. Because, some of this is really out there. It's like, come on.
when I listen to you, and actually Van Orsdale, which I know
Mm-hmm.
you know, Ann, who's a great medium from
Yes.
Phoenix, she used to live close to me. So it was the two of you that I listened to you, and I went to Banyan, and Dean actually came through during the Scott's physical
Wow.
mediumship seance, and he started talking about our dogs, and one of our dogs always has a wet nose, and how he always has a wet nose. And he started talking about buffaloes, and a mascot, which was where Dean was going to college, the mascot for his college, and of course the words of wisdom were just. But I'm kind of getting off track
Oh,
here.
that's
But
okay. We're coming to close
yeah,
to the end. But
yes,
I want to
yes,
ask
we
you,
are.
because I know I've
Yeah.
had this, and I think not everybody's going to start a podcast like you and I have, but what difference has it made in your life going from grief to having something to focus your energy on? Um,
Well,
how's it
it's
impacted you?
interesting because I think that in the beginning it was comforting, but now it's, I know this is why I was brought into this world. What has it done for me? It's helped me, like, you find a tribe, find people that that are so, oh my gosh, so authentic and so vulnerable in many ways, which I am so vulnerable. I mean, it's kind of like you get what you see. What is that saying? But
You give what
so
you
it's,
get? No, what I don't know what
yeah,
saying you're
no,
going
no,
for.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Whatever I am, that's what you get. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, perfect.
but
Very
yeah.
profound.
So yeah, it's helped me remember what's important in life. It's given me not, of course, comfort, but it's even given me more inspiration and passion, and this irrefutable message that needs to be brought to the world.
Hmm.
And I just, I if I can just make one little change for a person, I will have done my job. And so I'm a totally different person. Everything has changed me entirely, and I would give anything to go back to where I was, of course. But this experience and this podcast, it's transformed me. I'll hesitantly say for the good. And it's just has taught me what's really important. It's so great to meet so many people that feel the same way, and have the same message for the world. We just want to share, and just want to love, and just want to help this future generation and this world to be a better place, knowing that life does go on. And Leslie Lupo, I can't wait to interview her. I'm interviewing her next week. I
Nice.
just got to. Sorry. I'm
Oh,
just
you
looking
just
at
say
her book right
it's
now.
fine. I know with me, the worst thing that's ever happened in my life, which was the death of my dad, and surrounding it was loss of relationships with family members. I
Yes,
mean, it was awful. And from
it
that, the
is.
worst thing of my life has started, caused this. And now I have the best thing in my life. And just bringing up Scott
Yeah.
Milligan, we just started an online course that we're delivering together with Carrie McLeod and Phil Dykes, who I think are two of the best
Yes.
mediums on planet Earth. And we're bringing these kind of conversations into people's homes. If anybody's interested, it's called Connecting with Your Soul in the Unseen World. And so even though
Hmm.
we've started it, it will always be a on demand product because it's so good. So you can
Yeah.
check that out at we don't die radio.com if you're
And
interested. And then the other thing, you know this, but not everybody knows this, is we were discussing, I hate to say this, but church. And how
yes.
many of us grew up with going to church and you memorized the prayers and you had to go and then it was over. And I still remember some of the prayers from my childhood, but I don't have a clue what they mean. And with the COVID-19 pandemic here and everybody housebound, uh, Carrie, Phil, Scott, his partner Darren, and I came together with, why don't we do an online church service? So we do it on Sundays, 2:00 Eastern time, 11 Pacific, 7 UK time. But we've only done 2 of them so far. And again, if you're listening in 2022, there might be a whole bunch more by now. But we just brought together, and it's non-denominational, but it's in the style of spiritualism, which really embraces the afterlife. So there's prayer, but it's honest prayer, speaking it from our soul, nothing that's rehearsed or read. There's music. I take a few videos off of YouTube that are very inspirational. And there's a reading, and there's philosophy. And then at the end of the service, both Carrie and Phil are evidential mediums. One of them will take the stage, the Zoom stage, I say, online, and we do medium readings. There'll be a few contacts that are made for people that are watching. And it's amazing, the intelligence of this unseen world, to be able to connect people with their loved ones and show people that the afterlife is real. So I'm so proud of that. It's completely free. So you can go to WeDon'tDieRadio.com, check that out. But it's so soul quenching. And it's like, and here's I was going to say the killer, but here's the thing. The first one, we had 300 people show up for the very first one. The second one, there was 519 people that signed up, but I also aired it on Facebook Live, and there have been thousands of people. And just looking, there'd been 70 people shared the video, and they're just sharing it. So I'm afraid to look to see how many we have signed up for this Sunday. It'll be Easter Sunday.
I can attest to it. I was there Sunday, and it's for listeners. It's just so, it's my kind of church, if you will.
Yeah.
It's so powerful and beautiful, and the music. I love the video. Matter of fact, I got teary because it brought back so many memories. But it's beautiful. And also, talking about your workshop, I was able to attend the We Don't Die workshop in Orlando with you and Scott and Philip, and it changed my life also. It was just so wonderful, and all of that. Oh, all of the evidence and the people. And so thank you, Sandra,
You're
for
welcome.
doing your work, because it's amazing. And I can't wait for Easter Sunday. What's going to happen?
Well, there could be a trance address from Scott's Inspirers. And if people don't know what trance is, Scott has been sitting, blending with the unseen world, because we all have our guides, we all have our loved ones, but to strengthen his connection there for over 20 years. And he can close his eyes, listen to a couple of pieces of music, and with a sincere prayer that they can blend with his energy and use his mouth and speak words. And so there might be people that come through with a different voice than Scott speaks, with some of the most amazing philosophy. And for the skeptic, it's so easy to think, oh, this kid makes this up, but no, he does not. I've spent plenty of years by his side, and it's all just the real deal. So all of these church services are recorded. So I have a list of them and the replay link. So again, 2022 person listening, just go to that website and you'll be able to find what we're talking about. Easter Sunday of 2020. Oh,
that's just so great.
I also wanted just to mention for our listener, this may be your first episode with us. The home base for the show is WeDon'tDieRadio.com. And if you sign up for, I call it the Insiders Club, it's really just my email list. I give you some free things. It says, read a few chapters of my book, We Don't Die. It's really the whole book. There's also a very healing audio called How to Survive Grief. And there's some other things as well. So you want to make sure you check that out. There's a Facebook group that we have called We Don't Die Listeners, and it's over 5,000 people that talk about this stuff. And I don't know, like Marla's past and my past current situation, there's not people that I see on a daily basis that I can talk to about this stuff. And so, and so to have a group of people, I just invite you to be part of that if you're interested. And once again, Marla. I almost called you Darla. So sorry. I have a friend named
Okay.
Darla.
My twin sister's Carla, so you can call me
Is
anything with
she?
Arla. And I answer to
Oh,
it.
that's so funny. Your parents did that. Your website, interviewswithinnocence.com, correct?
Yes, and I'm on Instagram and
Oh,
Facebook
great.
at interviewswithinnocence.com and on all the places you can find podcasts. And Sandra, thank you so much for helping me start this podcast. I didn't even remember when you helped me buy tell me what little microphone to get. And
You're
here we are.
welcome. I'm so proud of you. And also, you're doing a service to me because, this is selfishly speaking, I can't deliver the content I'd like to deliver just because of time. And just to know
Yeah.
that there's someone else carrying the torch with the same message that's different yet similar. And so I
Yes,
know
yes.
conversations people will also like to have.
Yeah,
So
I have a very supportive. My twins and my husband and my dogs, they're very supportive. So I get to do this, and I am truly blessed to be able to do a lot of interviews. So anyway, thank you.
you're so welcome. You're so welcome. Any closing words, Marla?
Oh, closing words. Just to remember the most important thing walking through life is to love and how you treat others. And I think that sounds kind of cliche, but if we can all just maybe do a short, and I'm working on myself every day too, a short meditation, a prayer. I'm also doing this shaman apprenticeship, and I have my little mesa up there that I open up in the morning, but just to get grounded and remember who we really are.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you for being our guest today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Sandra. It was an honor.
Absolutely. And to our listener, thank you for being with us on this journey. Trust, even if you are living now in the most horrific, grief stricken, tragic moment of your life, it's hard to tell somebody to have faith that there's a pot of gold on the end of the rainbow there. But all you need to do, well, this doesn't sound so nice, but what I'm asking you to do is to be present, have people in your life that you can talk to, try to get your mind onto some positive things, even listening to Marla's show, my show, getting a good book, those kind of things. It will help in the journey. And someday it is my prayer and my faith that you can look back on your darkest days and say, without that, I wouldn't be in the best place of my life. So it's possible. It's definitely possible. So in closing, my name is Sandra Champlain, and I'm always so happy to be your host on We Don't Die Radio. I do believe wholeheartedly that life is an education for the soul and that your life here on earth is important. I love how Marla said pure and simple love. There is somebody in your life right now, whether it's a dog, cat, person, somebody you can call that you can share your love with. And we all know by giving love, we feel love. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.